How is it that we find ourselves surrounded by such complexity, such elegance?
The genes of you and me, the genes of you and me, we're all made of DNA. We're all made of the same chemical DNA. We're all made of DNA.
Hi, you're listening to DNA Today, a podcast and radio show where we discover new advances in the world of genetics. From genetic technology like CRISPR to rare diseases to new research, we have you covered. For a decade, DNA Today has brought you the voices of leaders in genetics. I'm Keira Deneen. I'm a certified genetic counselor and your host. Have you heard the big news yet? We're launching a Patreon. For those that are not familiar with Patreon, it's a platform that allows creators like podcasters to offer their followers more content, experiences, and even maybe some merch. We have an exciting list of ideas of what we will offer you listeners, but we want you to make the final decisions on which benefits we end up offering you. So get your votes in through our survey. The link is in the show notes and the blog post for this episode, and it's all over our social media. I promise you, it only takes 60 seconds. I tested it out myself. So please pause the show now, fill it out before we get started with this episode. And I just want to thank you so much. I'm really excited for this brand new benefit offering. Did you know you can learn the sex of your baby as early as 7 weeks into pregnancy? Juno Diagnostics offers Birch, which is a non-invasive prenatal test that screens for Y chromosome material to predict the sex of your baby. Here's how it works. You get a kit delivered directly to your home. You follow the instructions to collect a couple drops of blood from a finger stick. Then you ship it back to Juno's CLIA laboratory for testing. Within just a few days, you'll receive the results of the sex of your baby. Learn more at junodx.com, where you can use the code DNA Today for 10% off your purchase of Birch. Also, be sure to tune into our full episode interview with experts from Juno Diagnostics coming soon. Surely you've heard of whole genome sequencing, but what about rapid and ultra-rapid whole genome sequencing? This is an emerging method of diagnosing genetic conditions for quick management. PerkinElmer Genomics offers this incredibly valuable test, which can be life-saving for ill babies and kids. Learn more in our full episode with PerkinElmer Genomics on here, DNA Today. You can visit PerkinElmerGenomics.com for more information. The link is also available in the show notes and on our website, DNAtoday.com. There are a few artificial intelligence policies and regulations that could go into effect in this year, 2023. We're going to be exploring these today with Genobank.io's Daniel Uribe, with the focus on how it could affect genetics. Daniel is the father to a child with a rare disease. He's an expert in cybersecurity, data laws, NFTs, and genomics. He also invented bio-NFTs to tokenize digital rights over human biosamples and derive biodata based on data privacy laws like GDPR and CCPA to enable ethical IA training in genomics and healthcare. Thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Keira, for having me in your show. This is a very exciting day for me.
Yeah, and I don't know too much about kind of all the AI side of genomics and all the other things I mentioned. So it's an exciting interview for me to actually learn alongside the audience. So I wanted to start because a lot of the talk this year has been with ChatGPT. I feel like a couple years from now, people are going to be like, how did she not know what that was? So can you tell us about your thoughts on the rise of AI chatbots like ChatGPT and BioGPT and their impact on healthcare and the genomics industry?
Totally. No, thank you for the opportunity. So basically, there are many emerging AIs, and I think we will see more coming, hopefully. And basically, the AI allows the human knowledge to be augmented, right? Is like how an individual can be assisted by these systems and now be able to summarize or read, let's say, peer-reviewed papers, like 10,000 peer-reviewed papers, right? And then have something. So this is going to become very powerful, or is already powerful, but we're going to see more, not less. But there are challenges in terms of what data are we using for training these AIs, right? Is this data properly consented? and is this data really accurate, right? That's the other, because this is a famous saying, like in AI, garbage in, garbage out. So we want not to have that effect on AI, or to avoid it as much as possible.
Yeah, so it's going to be very important looking at what data we are pulling into this so that we can be getting really good results out, as you were mentioning there. And obviously with genomics, big data is a big part of genomics. It's like, how much data we get even from one genome is just astronomical. So looking at even just how we're going to start using and even have started using these chatbots and everything is I think going to be a game changer just in general, but also within healthcare and genomics. What role do you see AI playing in the regulation of healthcare data and privacy in the future? I know privacy is a big focus of yours with genobank.io. I mean, how can we ensure that this AI is being used ethically and responsibly? Because, when we start talking about, if we can, should we, that phrase that we say a lot on the show here, that certainly comes up with AI because things kind of start leaving our hands.
No, totally. This is core for AI, especially for credibility, right? Because there are some now authors or prominent, let's say, actors in the field that have criticized a little bit chatbot, because the ChatGPT, sorry, because it makes some mistakes. But it's a very new technology, so it is improving because it improves as we interact and as it learns, and there's humans feeding with the correct data. But again, the regulation will play a super important mission, the regulation will allow us literally to have like trusted AI system versus maybe not trusted or not authorized, right? The same as when somebody in their company said, hey, I am GDPR compliant or I am CCPA compliant. Well, the exact same thing will apply to AI. So it will either say, hey, my AI has been reviewed, or maybe not, right? So take it from a grain of salt. Either ways, I think in healthcare and genomics especially, AI will be a great advice or advisor. It'll be some guidance or approximation, statistical approximation, but would never be like enough to give a diagnostics, right? So we will still need the experts on each of the field in order to just give a diagnosis or a proper alignment. But again, the AI regulations are coming. We have two prominents, which is one, the European, and now President Biden has proposed a Bill of Rights for AI systems as well.
Yeah, so let's get into that a little bit. I was doing just a tad of research just so I knew enough to ask you questions, and I really wanted to learn in the moment. So as you mentioned, in the United States, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy released they call it the Blueprint for AI Bill of Rights, which I think I'm just like, wow, what century are we living in? This is kind of feels like a science fiction movie. So what is this bill? What guidance does it provide for genetic companies and other kind of healthcare related companies like ours?
No, totally. I mean, both AI frameworks or frameworks to regulate AI, better said, they're focused on inviting the whole ecosystem to build responsible and ethical AI systems, right? So it's more into the guidelines and recommendations today, but eventually I think it'll have even some potential, even, I don't know, maybe penalties, right, from some of the authorities. But basically, they are in risk categories, right? There are 4 categories, at least in the European regulation. There's like the minimal risk and to the maximum risk, right? And it imposes requirements for each category. So again, we are starting the conversation because obviously the governments are worried that the AI systems can discriminate, can decide in a biased kind of sense, right? And again, we want to emphasize, or these regulation emphasize the importance of transparency, accountability, non-discrimination, etc. And I believe this is the correct time to start the conversation about this.
Yeah, it really is, because as we've seen in so many areas of healthcare and science, related to that, we have technologies that are developed before we have laws in place. I mean, we saw this with CRISPR. So I think it's interesting. Technology moves so fast and laws move so slow, where we do have this lag where, companies are able to do things that aren't illegal maybe yet. So I think that's one kind of concern I have, especially in the privacy space, as we were talking. But kind of looking more at how advantageous this is as a tool. As you said, it's not going to replace a lot of human jobs and tasks and executive functioning, but it is a really good tool to be helping us. And, I'm thinking interpreting DNA data. That is a huge area where that is what takes the longest amount of time when we're looking for genetic testing results to come back. It's the interpretation part that takes a long time. So having a tool that helps you interpret, I can see that being really helpful. How do you see AI helping us to better understand and interpret DNA data? And how do you see this having an implication when it comes to personalized or precision medicine?
No, totally. So humans, we are incredibly smart, right? But incredibly slow.
Yes,
right?
I agree with that.
The computers are the opposite, right? So they are incredibly fast, but incredibly dumb, in essence, right? And hopefully no AI is listening, so they cannot take it
It's okay.
personally.
We can offend the AI. That's fine. Let's just not offend humans.
Exactly. So the combination is the powerful one, as you were saying, right? Because again, there is no human kind of capability of even analyzing one genome by hand, right? Let's say, or just by watching the bases, right? So now imagine if you're using, or you want to do a population study where you have 10,000, let's say, newborn sequencing data sets, right? So, or whatever. I mean, it would be literally impossible. So genomics is what it is today, thanks to computers, right? Now, AI can learn to be even more efficient every single time, right? And they will become a tool specifically for regional genomics, right? Or ethnicity-based genomics. What I'm trying to tell you, like as you know, obviously the variance of humanity is based on each country, on each ethnicity. Like for instance, I come from Mexico, and there are at least 68 prominent ethnicities. So we are a very diverse country. In the United States, even more, and such, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, is AI is like the computing capabilities plus the learning, right? And the learning to automate. This could be like the main feature, the automation. So that's a given, right? That is happening today. But again, the surroundings, the governance of these AIs is what is really challenging, and it's in every single panel I've been participating for the last 4 months.
Yeah, it's been really the focus of the conversation, and I'm also thinking about some of the challenges that companies are going to face in terms of actually implementing these AI solutions. We're talking about how great it's going to be, but we have to get there. We have to be able to learn how to use these tools, especially as we've been talking about with like the clinical genomics industry. What are some of these challenges that you see when it comes to implementing, to start using more of these AI technologies within data and everything?
Oh, that's the key question, I would say, because today, I mean, it's a saying. So cybersecurity and the basic of the encryption and decryption are given today, right? So that we have to put that like the first rock, right? But the biggest challenge today is the provenance of the data, right? The provenance of the data, or let's say the certification of data sets that are conflict-free, that are consented, that have a proof of integrity, have proof of quality, have been authorized maybe by an IRB, by an independent research board. I mean, that's the challenging part. That is what we call the metadata of all the genomics and healthcare data sets, right? That's the important part, in my opinion, right now. So it's not only if I have 10,000 high quality data sets, is what is the legal framework, right? What is the authorization, the permissions that I have to use the data? And that is going to be the first question when an AI shows like it is accurate, right? Or is predicting accurate. I'm sure the first question would be, is this working? Yes. And later on, right on, would say, okay, let me show the credentials or the certifications of the data that you use to train your AI. Because otherwise, it will be a potential liability right there.
Yeah, certainly important, so that we see, well, how is it coming up with this information? Like, what are you feeding into it, like you said at the top of the show? And part of what genobank.io is looking at is a lot of this. So you guys have developed really cool technology, especially to make sure that data is safe. So can you kind of further explain how genobank.io's tech actually stacks up to help individuals and families explore their DNA using AI while also ensuring that that data is safe and secure?
Of course. No, thank you. I mean, this is one of our main focus right now. Genobank started in 2018 with one main focus, like let's enable patients, like individuals and family, to own and control their DNA dataset. So it started just like a genetic data locker, right? Where you can interact with the laboratory, send a sample, they will upload your data in a private repository. That was pretty much it. Then we expanded the functionality, so now you can connect it to bioinformatics, right? So now if you want to, let's say, compute your ancestry or your admixture, you can do that inside your genetic data locker with privacy. But now, with these emerging AIs, so we just connected to an AI, so you can now interact with ChatGPT. And it's very interesting because ChatGPT, you might ask, hey, ChatGPT, please list the SNPs that are associated with Alzheimer's disease. And it'll tell you the list. And now through our system, you can literally go through some code and list these SNPs and then make a compute over your own data with privacy. So this is done without disclosing your private to any company, not even to us, because the compute is done in a private repository. But again, we think this is the correct approach, is not necessarily connecting the data directly to ChatGPT or to BioGPT or whatever the AI might be, but is to just combine the two of them and respect, again, the privacy, because you don't want to necessarily disclose your risk to develop Alzheimer's right away, and even less to an AI that maybe or maybe not. Let's say, like for instance, ChatGPT has a huge investment from Microsoft. Nothing against Microsoft, but maybe I don't feel comfortable disclosing my genetic information to a chatbot that is partially owned by Microsoft, right? That would be the case. But again, I want to have the ability, I want to increase my superpowers of human powers in terms of using these AIs to make an approximation to what is going on with my SNPs, right, with my genetic data. But again, this is just like to the first inform. The best thing I would say is the interactions later on. So when you can book maybe a chat or a call or a session with your genetic counselor, the human, the real one, the expert, and say, hey, you know what? This is a report that my genetic data combined with the recommendations of ChatGPT or BioGPT throw. This is some references. Please help me, right? And they will literally will able to help you. But at the end of the day, this is again generating more and more conversations. We call these citizens genomics. It's not necessarily that as a citizen or as a patient or potential patient, you will go directly to the diagnosis. No, that will never be the purpose. But it's again, it's like we come to from the era of Dr. Google, right? So you have some symptoms, you will ask. So now, if you have your genetic data, you will ask ChatGPT, say, hey, how do you reference, the SNPs for developing atherosclerosis, right? And you can do that in our platform and give a statistical report without any privacy concerns.
And it's so helpful for patients to be able to take this power into their own hands and say, I can do research and I can collect information. And then when they do get to meet with a healthcare provider like a genetic counselor, they can have very pointed questions because they can be educated to that point. So I think that's just huge, because a big goal of mine is to be able to contribute to these efforts where we are developing tools and helping people educate themselves, so that then when they meet with these healthcare providers, they're not like learning, what do you mean? What is a genetic variant? Like they can learn that off something else, but really getting into these conversations, like you said. So it's such a great marriage of the two, of using the power of these tools, but in this setting where it is private and safe. So it really is the best of both worlds there. Genetic technology moves fast. The first genome took 13 years to finish a draft. For reference, this was 20 years ago in 2003. And now a whole genome sequence can be performed in days, even hours. Since sequencing an entire genome can be done in such a short amount of time, this lowers the cost, which means more people can utilize whole genome sequencing now. This is particularly helpful in the NICU for ill infants. PerkinElmer Genomics explained more to me in our full episode here on DNA Today. It is remarkable how quick diagnosis from whole genome sequencing can save a baby's life with a change in treatment informed from the results of that test. I learned more about how genome data is mined to maximize useful information from one data set and other omic assays that help enhance diagnosis. Don't miss the full episode here on DNA Today. You can visit PerkinElmerGenomics.com for more information. The link is also available in the show notes and on our website, DNAtoday.com. Juno Diagnostics has developed the next generation of non-invasive prenatal tests so that all pregnant people can access a higher standard of care. Juno Diagnostics is the only genetic testing company on the market that performs NIPS for common aneuploidies on blood samples from a finger stick instead of a traditional venous blood draw. That means you collect your sample on your own time at home and still have NIPS at a CLIA laboratory. Juno's Hazel NIPS screens for common chromosome variations seen in pregnancy, such as Down syndrome or trisomy 21, trisomy 13, and trisomy 18, in addition to testing for fetal sex. You can order this test yourself or have your healthcare provider order for you. Head over to junodx.com and use the code DNA Today for 10% off. And keep your eye out for our full episode interview with experts from Juno Diagnostics, including fellow genetic counselor Katie Sagasser and Dr. Allison Rogers. In the meantime, check out junodx.com to learn more about Hazel and their other test, Birch, which tests just for the sex of your baby. Again, that's junodx.com with code DNA Today for 10% off. As many of you know, through podcasting, I've become an entrepreneur, including consulting for other podcasts. Since I don't have a business degree, I've learned a lot through podcasts like Porch Talks. The inspiration to start this show was from the host, Melissa Bradley, who wanted to inform, instruct, and inspire fellow entrepreneurs, especially people who identify as women, people of color, immigrants, veterans, people with disabilities, and folks in the LGBTQIA+ community, which drew me initially. So if you're thinking about starting a business or just love hearing stories about how businesses grow, Porch Talks is for you. Search Porch Talks in your podcast player or use the links in the show notes to start listening. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about is your family vault and how that helps parents participating in newborn sequencing programs like Baby Seek. I mean, there's Baby Deer, Baby Bear out there that are doing like whole genome sequencing, rapid whole genome sequencing. And this is an area that we've talked about multiple times in the show. So tell me how this helps parents maintain ownership and control of their baby's genomic data, but then also be collaborating with researchers and these federal programs to help, especially in the rare disease space, because I know that's one that's close to your heart.
Exactly, and this is, and thank you for the opportunity to talk, because we got diagnosed, our kid was diagnosed until he was 2 years old, right? Which is timely. I mean, there's some other not so lucky parents that even take longer, like even
6 to 8 years, I've heard most recently is like an average diagnostic odyssey. It's so long.
Exactly, Kira. So that's one of the key aspects. So imagine when you have your baby, then weeks later you have this report and you have actionable items, right? This is, even if this is not a life-threatening situation. Even now, like Stanford, Dr. Ulen has, and his team has the record. They had the newborn sequencing data results.
Yeah, and he was on episode 150, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
exactly.
he chatted about that. Yeah, like amazing.
It is amazing. So we are there, right? So again, the big conversation right now is who is the correct custodian, who is the owner, who is the one that will give access for how long, right? And such and such. In our point of view, again, the family vault is inspired directly in this. So it's a genetic data locker, but now it's not for the individual, it's for the newborn, but also can get obviously mom and dad and the siblings inside it, because genomics is a family reference, right? At the end of the day. So it can be better studied if you have obviously the complete family, or as much of the family members as possible. That being said, the main important thing is how you can collaborate or still collaborate with these very important research programs that we have now available. And we also protect them because these companies are getting hacked, right? So just a couple of days ago, one company in the UK was hacked. 2.1 million genetic data sets were stolen, right? And this is really, really bad, and we don't want that to be the case of the babies or the newborns, right? So again, we are using decentralized vaults. So instead of having just one database with millions of records, you will have each of the data sets properly separated, right, in the governance of each family vault. That's our vision. I don't know if this is going to be really the future, but this is the future we envision, right? So it's literally, the hackers will literally have to hack each and every one of the vaults. That elevates exponentially the amount of resources, again, negative focused, but the amount of resources necessary to decrypt every single vault, right? And also now, if those vaults can be connected to AI and somehow ask some questions with privacy-preserving technologies, as zero-knowledge proofs or homomorphic encryption and such, then we think is a very powerful tool, and hopefully then population genomics at the level we need of humanity can be developed. Because if somebody is, with all due respect, because I've been hearing some people talking, like if somebody expects that there's going to be a database of, let's say, 350 million Americans all aggregated in one open, protected database, I think that's even far from reality. That's something not going to happen.
Yeah.
Or hopefully it's not going to happen.
Right. Hopefully not going to happen. Because if that was there, then that's like an easy target at that point for a hacker to be at least trying to have that be their goal, to get into that data and steal that data. So it's interesting, especially when you're looking at it from perspective of different countries' governments. So in other countries we have, outside of the US, like in Europe, like there's, the healthcare is much more, it's simplified, it's through the government, whereas in the United States it's through a lot of private institutions. So I can see how that there's differences there, and that other countries might be doing a lot more gathering of genetic data and having it in one database, which I would think is as we've been talking about, a little bit more, susceptible to hackers. Whereas what you're talking about is kind of having a bunch of different ones. How do you foresee with your company, with genobank.io, how do you foresee your biodata helping governments with these solutions and other, in the US, like small, maybe not even small, but like someone like, Yale or Montefiore, like these larger institutions, New York Presbyterian, where they have their own databases, but they're still really big. So how do you see you helping kind of really shape the landscape of genomics and making sure this data is accessible to who it needs to be, but not accessible to other people?
No, that's I believe that's a core question. So we're gonna live in a hybrid world for a while, right? Centralization and decentralization in terms of who holds the data, like centralized databases versus decentralized databases, which the decentralized basis is what we propose in the Family Vault. It's basically a database in a family-owned server or instance or machine, right? Or cloud, whatever that may be, versus, as you were saying, like a government, like centralizing all the information. So the only thing that we think is that nobody should have your whole genome, for instance, or your whole exome. So we are thinking more into how can we increase the digital hygiene, right? Or be more hygienic with our digital data. So this is something like is when you use the services from a hospital. So when you go, you use the services, but you keep your stuff with you. That's more what the world we envision. Like, hey, you can port, in a portable kind of state of the data, you will be able to open access, close access, choose certain regions of your genome, like for instance, just create sub data sets, like for instance in oncogenomics, right? We know like for cancer genomics, breast cancer genomics is approximately 300 genes, but not the 21,000 or the
20,000-ish, whatever that.
Exactly,
they don't need access to all of that, just the ones
exactly.
relevant to cancer.
Exactly. So why don't we just create sub data sets that is on clicks on your computer and say, okay, these are my oncogenes, right? And this is enough to whatever the government wants, right? So that's kind of the better approach. Obviously, the vision or the dream is that everything is encrypted using homomorphic encryption and such as, but the amount of computational power to deliver homomorphic encryption in just one human data set is huge. Today is not even a question, right? I mean, it'll cost like thousands of dollars to make just one query of I don't know, few data sets. But what I'm trying to tell you is like, it's going to be a negotiation, right? Because it's true that the researchers love to have the data with them, right? Available in their servers, in their premises, because sometimes they have more powerful machines and so on and so forth. But let's not forget that now in our hands, we have very powerful phones. In laptops, now we have the M1, the M2 chipsets from, these are literally AI-prepared laptops. Like they can do a lot of the computing that we have dreamed like 10 years ago to do it in a very large computer in a data center. But again, the thing is changes, but I think we're going to live into a hybrid world for a while.
Yeah, I think we are. And a lot of this is important to be able to keep safe, and where you only have access to it or people have only limited access, as you've been talking about, because insurance companies, that's a whole aspect that Gina protects us from some things, but it doesn't protect us from everything in terms of insurance companies saying, well, we're going to charge you a lot more because you have this variant or something. So it doesn't protect against life insurance, long-term care. So I think that's something that maybe even that stuff will change too, where suddenly that's going to be included in the future, where we are protected, where insurance companies can't hike up pricing based on your genetic results from that. So I just wanted to mention that at some point during the episode. But Daniel, thank you so much. I mean, you really know your stuff. I knew I'd learned so much in this episode. And this is just going to become more and more relevant as people are doing more genetic testing, especially as you were bringing up in terms of like in the NICU and even doing like newborn screening, where eventually, I think, as we've been predicting on the show, it's going to start being whole exome sequencing at some point, I think, with newborn screening. So,
Exactly.
yeah, we're going to need you. So please stay in the field.
Thank you. No, hopefully we will be able to serve as many programs, individuals, families, and such as those, because at the end of the day, we were talking, like we need to we have genetic testing. Thank God for genetic testing, but we need certified and trustable genetic testing. Like, hey, because we are going to now to connect it to AI, and again, AI will amplify the errors or will help us to amplify the correct data. So we want always the correct data. We want to use the tools, and we need the certification of data for this case, and hopefully we can help everyone that is interested in this type of solutions.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you again.
Thank you very much, Kira. I appreciate it. This is a show that I love, so I'm very honored to be here with your audience.
For more information about today's episode, visit dnapodcast.com, where you can also stream all episodes of the show. We encourage your questions, comments, guest pitches, and ideas. Send them all into info@dnapodcast.com. Search DNA Today on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, so you can connect with us there. And a favor, please rate and review the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. This truly helps us climb the charts and allow more genetic nerds like yourself to find the show. DNA Today is hosted and produced by myself, Kira Deneen. Our social media lead is Corinne Merlino. Our video lead is Amanda Andrioli. Thanks for listening, and join us next time to discover new advances in the world of genetics.
The genes of you and me, the genes of you and me, are all made of DNA. We're all made of the same chemical DNA.